Marcus Ellis sat alone in his small rental car, staring at the tall glass building, where he had spent the last 5 years as CEO. He pressed his hands against the steering wheel and took a steadying breath. Today was not a normal day. Today, he would step inside with a new name, a new face, a single purpose: to learn the truth about life on the support floor of his own company. He adjusted his thin brown wig and pulled down the edge of a baseball cap. He smoothed the collar of the cheap polo shirt and tugged at the khaki pants that fit loosely on his strong frame. He looked nothing like Marcus Ellis now. The smooth suit, the polished shoes, the confidence he carried in long board meetings all were gone. Instead, he was Mark Eaton, a temporary fill-in for the customer support team. He rose from the driver's seat, reached into the passenger side for a backpack, and stepped onto the sidewalk. The morning air felt cool against his face. He joined a small group of new hires waiting at the front door. None of them looked his way. He felt both relief and a strange tug of guilt for deceiving these people he had hired. He walked through the revolving doors and showed a borrowed ID card to the guard. The card read Mark Eaton with a photo of a white man, glasses perched on his nose. He nodded at the guard and moved on. His chest felt tight. Remembered the memo he had sent 2 weeks ago, saying he needed to fill this role at short notice. His HR director had raised an eyebrow but took it as a sign of his hands-on style. No one suspected that the new fill-in was the boss himself. He found the large, open-plan office where desks were lined in neat rows. Each desk had a computer, a phone, and a small pile of sticky notes. Several workers sat at their stations, speaking softly into headsets or typing on keyboards. The hum of conversation filled the room. He heard snippets of chats, gentle apologies, patient requests, polite goodbyes. It sounded calm, but the faces behind those headsets often looked tired. He took a deep breath and walked to the desk labeled Mark Eaton. He dropped his backpack under the desk and adjusted the headset. The foam pad felt odd against his ear. He glanced around for instructions. A small sheet of paper taped to his monitor explained the day's tasks: answer calls, log tickets, update, customer records, and offer friendly service. He switched his status to available and waited. A few moments passed before the first call came in. "Thank you for calling Techies Support. My name is Mark. How can I help you today?" he said, forcing a calm tone. The voice on the other end was frustrated and loud. After a few minutes, he resolved the issue and clicked Close Ticket. He felt a little thrill at fixing a problem so quickly. He reminded himself not to stand out. He had miles to go before true progress could be made. After his third call, he heard 2 women whispering at the desk behind him. He leaned back and peeked. A tall woman with neat braids was offering advice to a younger woman whose shoulders were hunched. The younger woman took notes quickly. Marcus studied them both in the mirror he had taped to his monitor. The younger woman was Aisha Khan, with warm brown skin and kind eyes. She was quiet, but her fingers flew over the keyboard. Her voice was soft when she spoke, but even then, you could hear her care for each customer. Tanya Roberts, the senior lead, stood nearby in a crisp blouse and tailored pants. She snapped her gum loudly and tapped her pen on Aisha's desk. "You missed the last code update," she said, her tone sharp. "Check the manual again. This is basic stuff, Aisha." Aisha's hand froze over the keyboard. She swallowed and nodded, eyes down. Tanya's voice carried a slight edge, as if she expected her to fail. Marcus felt a tight knot in his chest. He watched Tanya leave with her head high, as if she had done Aisha a favor by pointing out her mistake. Aisha let out a shaky breath and examined the manual. Marcus pretended to stretch, but his mind raced. He wondered how often this happened. He wondered how many times Aisha's gentle nature made her an easy target at the first break. A few of the fill-ins gathered by the water cooler. He talked about simple things: hot coffee, weekend plans, lunch spots nearby. Marcus stood in the circle, gripping his paper cup. He took a small sip of bitter coffee brewed hours ago. None of them asked who he was. He listened as one young man complained about the strict schedule, and another shared a tip for calming angry callers. It was a world away from his luxury office, On the top floor, Aisha joined them a moment later, carrying her own cup. She smiled at the group but pulled her sleeve to cover her hand when she held the cup. "I forgot to charge my Fitbit," she said softly, "so I'm having water instead." One of the fill-ins offered a friendly nod. Marcus watched as she sipped her water, eyes darting to her phone screen. She had a small photo of a little girl clipped to the back of the casing. She glanced at it, bit her lip, and returned her gaze to the group. When the break ended, everyone returned to their desks in silence. Marcus sat down, feeling more respect for these workers than ever. He dialed into his next call and tried to focus on the customer's needs. Each time he clicked next, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. He knew that real change would have to come from understanding the everyday life of the people he employed. A few hours into the shift, he slipped away for lunch. He chose the cafeteria in the basement where food was served buffet style. He picked a small salad and a piece of fruit, then found Aisha in line. She had her tray half full and looked at the options with careful thought. He stood behind her, and she glanced up. He nodded and said, "Hi, Aisha, right? I'm Mark." She blinked, startled. She nodded and said, "Yes, I'm sorry, do I know you?" He smiled and decided to risk the small talk. "We talked at the cooler," he said. "I saw you had water, but I wanted to grab a bite." She smiled politely and relaxed a little. They went through the line together and sat at a table with 3 other fill-ins. He asked how she liked the job. She said she was new, but she wanted to learn. She spoke of wanting to help people solve problems. Marcus nodded, remembering why he had started this Undercover in the first place. He had heard complaints from clients circling online, but he had not heard the real voices of his own staff. He was hearing them directly. He asked about her background. She said she studied computer science in college and volunteered at a community center teaching kids how to code. She had joined Techies 6 months ago, hoping to grow into a more technical role. He listened carefully as she talked about her dreams. Then she hesitated. He waited, sipping from his water bottle. "She told me my work was sloppy," Aisha said quietly, looking down. "She said I don't belong here." Her voice cracked. Oh, Marcus wanted to reach out and touch her arm, but he stopped himself. Instead, he said, "I'm sorry, she was too harsh. You're good at this." She looked at him, surprised. "Thank you," she said. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and focused on her food. He realized then how small words of kindness could mean so much. After lunch, they both returned to the floor. Marcus glanced at Tanya, who was chatting with another supervisor near the corner. He watched as she rolled her eyes and patted her phone. He felt a flicker of anger but kept his tone neutral. He had to see how far things went. Aisha settled in at her desk, and Marcus sat down next to her. He offered to help if she had any questions. She smiled shyly and said she might need help with a tricky ticket later. He nodded and turned to his own screen. All day he had seen the small slips of bias, the unkind words hidden behind polite faces. He had heard about pay freezes and empty promises for training. He had felt the weight of tired voices. He took one last call before his shift ended. The customer was calm, almost bored. He closed the ticket quickly and logged out. We slid off the headset and leaned back. He watched Aisha pack up her bag, wondered what she would face tomorrow. He gathered his belongings quietly and walked toward the exit. Outside, the sun was low in the sky. He paused and watched the glass building reflect the orange light. He thought about the stories he had heard today and the ones he had yet to hear. He walked to his car with a sense of both triumph and worry. He had made it through the day without being found out. He had seen the truth behind the faces in the support room. He had met Aisha and learned how quietly she suffered. He had heard Tanya's harsh words and watched the team's nervous silence. He felt the first stirrings of change inside him. He opened the driver's door and sank into the seat. He closed his eyes and let out a long breath. Tomorrow, he would return in his suit, but the memory of the support floor would stay with him. He would use what he learned to help people like Aisha. He would not let their voices go unheard. Today was only the start of his journey to bring real change to his company. He arrived before sunrise, slipping into the building with careful steps. The lobby was empty except for the security guard at the desk. Showed his Mark-Eaton badge again and headed to the support floor, his heart pounding. Remembered how Aisha's eyes had clouded with hurt the day before. He vowed to himself that he would not let her stand alone again. He slid into his seat just as the morning rush began. The phones rang almost at once. Answered each call with a calm tone, even as his mind raced ahead to what might happen later. He watched Aisha across the row. She was tense, her shoulders tight above her neat blouse. She tapped at her keyboard quickly, trying to keep up with the incoming tickets. Tanya Roberts stood by her desk with a stack of printouts. She flipped through them, lips pursed. When Aisha finished a call, Tanya leaned in and pointed to the screen. "Your notes are wrong," she said, her voice carrying just enough sharpness to make the whole team look up. "You reported the wrong firmware version. That's basic information." Aisha's hands trembled on the keyboard. She opened the ticket again, her eyes downcast. I thought I had the right file," she said softly. Her voice was so low that only a few people close by could hear. Tanya sighed dramatically and tapped her pen against the desk. Each tap echoed in the hushed space. A few coworkers shifted in their chairs, reluctant to get involved but unable to tear their eyes away. Marcus felt a hot surge of anger in his chest. He had rehearsed this moment silently on his drive in. He had told himself to gather evidence, to remain hidden. But as he watched Tanya press her point and Aisha shrink back, he knew he could not stay silent. He set down his headset, stood up, and walked over without hesitation. "Excuse me," he said, his voice firm but controlled. The room froze. Headsets paused in midair. Tanya looked up, startled, as Marcus stood before her. "Yes, Aisha's notes are accurate. Shh." She sent the version that the customer's software actually needed. Tanya's eyes narrowed. "I don't know who you are to question me," she snapped. "I've been here longer than you have. You must have missed something." Marcus kept his gaze steady. "I've watched her handle every call with care. I've checked the ticket logs." She corrected the version when the customer clarified. "That is how you solve problems." A hush fell over the entire floor. Even the machines seemed to pause. Aisha looked up at Marcus, disbelief and relief mixing on her face. She pressed her hand to her heart, as if to still its fluttering. Tanya flushed, anger burning behind her. "Eyes, you can't just interrupt like that," she hissed. "This is not your place." Marcus leaned slightly forward, lowering his voice so that only Tanya could hear. "It is my place when someone speaks to a colleague unfairly. It is my place when I see good work punished." He straightened and spoke to the whole room now. Respect and honesty matter more than titles or tenure. Several coworkers shifted, their eyes wide. A young man at the next desk whispered to his neighbor, "Did you see that?" Aisha took a shaky breath and sat up straighter, encouraged by his words. Tanya raised her chin and drew herself to full height. "You are insubordinate," she said. "I'll be speaking with HR about this." "Do that?" Marcus replied calmly. "I welcome that conversation." He turned to Aisha. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. Aisha nodded, blinking back. Tears. "Thank you," she whispered. Marcus placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder and guided her back to her desk. He returned to his own station, the buzz of whispered conversations following him. He held his breath as he put the headset back on, forcing his hands to stay steady. He overheard Tanya on the phone in the corner, her tone clipped as she spoke to someone in HR. Aisha's eyes met his across the row. She mouthed, "Thank you." He gave her a small nod. Then the next call rang, and he answered it as Mark, the fill-in. His voice was calm, though his heart still thundered in his chest. Throughout the rest of the morning, the atmosphere was strange and electric. People stole glances at Marcus when they thought he was not looking. Aisha seemed lighter, as if a weight had lifted. She tackled each ticket with renewed confidence. Marcus felt proud, but also uneasy. He knew Tanya would not let this go easily. At lunch, he found Aisha sitting alone again, slid into the seat beside her. She looked at him with wide, grateful eyes. "I never imagined anyone would stand up for me," she said quietly. "I thought I was alone." Marcus smiled gently. "You are not alone," he said. "No one should face this alone." She nodded and looked down at her sandwich. They ate in comfortable silence for a while, broken only by the distant hum of the cafeteria. "I've worked hard to learn this job," Aisha said after a pause. "I want to grow here. But sometimes I wonder if I should try somewhere else." Her voice quivered. Marcus felt a pang of guilt. He was the cause of this turmoil in a way. Yet he also knew he was doing what needed to be done. "You belong here," he said firmly. "Every company needs people like you, people who care. Don't give up." She met his gaze, hope shining through. He believed every word he said. After lunch, the shift resumed. Tanya watched Marcus and Aisha interact from a distance, her arms crossed. Marcus focused on his calls, careful to follow all the rules. He answered questions, logged tickets, and helped solve problems. Yet his mind kept drifting back to the confrontation. He replayed it over and over, checking his tone, his words. He knew that if he had revealed himself, the moment would have lost its power. His anonymity protected Aisha, for now. Late in the afternoon, a particularly difficult call came through. The customer was angry about a billing issue. Marcus guided them through the process, de-escalating the situation with calm words and clear answers. The customer ended the call with a sincere thank you. Marcus closed the ticket and leaned back, letting out a slow breath. Tanya approached his desk, her heels clicking on the floor. Marcus looked up, ready for whatever she would say. She glared. "I already talked to HR," she said. "They want an official statement from you about your actions this morning. You will meet with them after the shift." Marcus pressed his lips together. "That's fine," he said. "I have no regrets." He touched the headset, preparing for the next call. As the clock inched toward the end of the day, the team grew quiet, as if waiting for a verdict. When the final call ended, Marcus logged off and packed his bag. Aisha hurried over, her face bright. "Marcus, Mark, thank you again," she said. "I don't know what I would have done without you." He shook his head. "You would have found your own strength," he said. "But I'm glad I was there." She smiled, eyes shining. He followed Tanya down the hall to the HR office. Each step felt heavier than the last. He wondered what would happen next. He wondered how far the company would go to punish a man who defended a colleague. But he also felt a quiet pride. He had stood for what was right. He had shown that even hidden voices mattered. He opened the HR door and stepped inside, ready for the next challenge. Marcus sank into the stiff chair in the small reception area. The bright lights overhead made him squint. He watched his own reflection ripple in the glass door. His heart thumped so hard he thought his chest would crack. He tried to calm his racing thoughts. He told himself he was Mark Eaton, a temp, still carried the cheap backpack and wore the same polo shirt. His tie and suit were back in his car. The air smelled like old carpet and office polish. He focused on the ticking clock above the desk. Each tick seemed to shout his mistakes. He had stood up for Aisha. Now he wondered if he had done the wrong thing. A door opened, and a tall woman in a crisp suit stepped out. She had a polite smile, but her eyes were hard. "Mr. Eaton?" she asked. He stood and nodded, his legs trembling. She led him down a short hallway. The walls were lined with framed mission statements and awards. He recognized some of the plaques. They were his own ideas, framed and hung. By HR, he felt a twinge of guilt, tried to remember what had driven him here. Aisha's hurt face, Tanya's harsh words, took a deep breath and followed the woman into a small office. The room held a plain desk, 2 chairs, and a computer. Monitor turned away. Behind the desk sat a man with glasses and a stern frown. Papers were spread in front of him. He looked up without greeting. His eyes flicked over Marcus's borrowed badge. "Mr. Eaton, please have a seat," he said. Marcus sat and placed his hands on his lap. The man cleared his throat. "You have been accused of insubordination and of disrupting the chain of command," he said, tapping a sheet of paper. "We have statements from your floor lead, Tanya Roberts." He pushed the paper toward Marcus. "We need your version of events." Marcus kept his voice calm, did not want to raise suspicion. "I was doing my job," he said. "A colleague was being spoken to unfairly. I stepped in." He glanced at the HR manager. I thought I was expected to treat everyone with respect. His simple words felt muddy in his mouth. The man's frown deepened. You do not get to choose when to follow orders, he snapped. You disobeyed a senior staff member in front of the team. That is a serious breach. Marcus shook his head. I understand the rule, he said. But I saw someone being hurt. I know how it feels when your work is ignored or twisted. I believe I did the right thing. He spoke softly now, hoping reason would help. The man folded his hands. He looked at the file again. Company policy is clear, he said. You have no authority over other staff. You cannot correct them in front of customers or peers. He leaned forward. Your actions have damaged team morale and disrupted the workflow. Marcus felt a knot in his throat. He wanted to say more, to explain who he really was. He thought of pulling off his wig, showing his own face, but he knew that would end everything. He sat back and nodded. I know, he said. I just wish the team could work in a fair place. The man's lips twitched in what might have been pity or just tiredness. He picked up a letter from the desk. He slid it across. This is your notice of termination, effective immediately. Marcus picked up the letter, hands shaking. He read the words quickly. Insubordination. Act. Disruption of workflow. Violation of chain of command. His chest tightened. The words blurred. He looked at the HR manager. She watched him calmly, as if this happened every day. He swallowed. There must be another way, he said quietly. I only wanted to help. The man stood and folded the paper. You are free to collect your belongings and leave the premises, he said. Security has been instructed to escort you out. Marcus closed the folder. He rose and bowed his head. He stared at the door, then back at the desk. He felt dizzy. He walked out of the office without a word. The HR manager opened the door. For him, her face unreadable, passed her, his shoulders heavy. He walked down the hall, each step echoing in his ears. At the end, 2 security guards waited. They nodded at him, then asked him to follow. As they led him through the support floor, heads snapped up. Phones were held halfway to ears. Agents stared at him in shock. A hush fell over the room. Mouths hung open. He recognized desks and monitors from just the day before. He saw Aisha sitting where she always sat. Her eyes were wide. Her lips trembled. She stared at him as he walked by, escorted by the guards. He wanted to tell her it was okay. He wanted to reveal the truth before he left, but he knew he could not. His true self had to stay hidden for now. The guards guided him to the front. Lobby. The security guard who first scanned his badge looked up in surprise when he saw Mark Eaton being led out in disgrace. No one called out. No one moved. It felt as if the entire building had gone silent. He walked past rows of desks and past the glass walls of conference rooms. He saw his own office way up above. He felt a strange emptiness. He had risked a lot, and now it seemed he had lost everything. When he reached the revolving doors, the guards stepped back. One of them unlocked the doors and let him push through. He stepped out into the cool evening air. The sun had set, and the lights from the building cast long shadows on the pavement. He turned and watched as the door spun shut behind him. Felt a mix of sadness, anger, and relief. He had defended someone who needed help, but the cost was high. He reached into his pocket for his keys and unlocked the rental car. Inside, the silence wrapped around him like a blanket. He slid into the driver's seat and shut the door. The engine was off, but for a moment he just sat there, breathing in and out. He thought of Aisha, of her surprised face, of the way she had looked at him. He thought of the team, of the hush that fell over them. He thought of Tanya, and how she had watched him walk away. He felt a sting of pride and a stab of doubt. Had he done the right thing? He pressed his hand against the steering wheel and closed his eyes, remembered the day he had begun this undercover mission. He told himself it was the only way to see the truth. He had wanted to fix things from the ground up. He had hoped to learn enough to change policies, to bring fairness and respect. But now he was fired. He wondered if he would ever have that chance. He turned the key, and the engine roared to life. He pulled out of the parking spot and onto the street. The lights of the city blinked around him. Cars honked in the distance. He felt small in his plain car, wearing plain clothes, pushed out into a world that did not know who he was. But then he remembered something Aisha had said. "You belong here," he repeated the words quietly. He knew he did belong. He knew. The fight was not over. He just had to find a new way to help. He drove into the night, ready to plan his next step, determined to turn this setback into a spark for change. The day after Mark Eaton's sudden firing, the support floor felt emptier than usual. Some desks sat unused, as though those who worked there could not bring themselves to swap roles with a temp who had stood up for kindness. Aisha Khan arrived. Early, her steps light with both worry and hope. She remembered how Mark had defended her when Tanya had spoken harshly. She wondered if anyone else on the team felt the same mix of shock and gratitude. As the clock struck 9, the hum of headsets did not rise. Instead, a hush spread across the floor. One by one, workers set down their phones. Aisha watched as the young man who usually cracked jokes tilted his head toward his neighbor. And then, without warning, someone turned off the lights. Phones clicked off their headsets, monitors dimmed, a wave of solidarity rolled through the room. No one spoke at first. People just stood behind their chairs, looking at the empty seat where Mark Eaton had sat. Aisha felt her heart pound. She scanned the faces she had come to rely on. Some looked determined, others looked afraid. But in every eye she saw the same question. What now? Aisha cleared her throat. "We can't work like this," she said softly but firmly. Her voice echoed in the quiet room. "We can't let them think it's okay to fire someone for doing the right thing." A cheer rose from the group. They knew she spoke the truth. Slowly, people walked to the center of the floor. Chairs scraped back. Aisha looked at her colleagues and felt a surge of strength. She climbed onto a chair so everyone could see her. "We need to tell the world," she said. "We need to show our customers and our board that we believe in respect." Heads nodded. A hush fell again, but it was a hopeful hush. They all went to their desks and opened their laptops, and fingers danced over keyboards. Soon, social media lit up with the hashtag #BringBackMark. Screens around the room showed posts from customers who had once been annoyed by long hold times, but now cheered for the temp who dared to fight for fairness. The company's official support account retweeted messages of solidarity. Meanwhile, Marcus Ellis sat in his small apartment, staring at his phone. He had washed his suit and packed away his wig, but he could not wash away the memory of Aisha's eyes. He reached for his coffee mug, but the cup trembled in his hand when he saw the flood of notifications. His phone buzzed with messages. He clicked on one and froze. Customers were posting his LinkedIn profile. They had discovered his real name. They called him a hero. They demanded the board give him back his job. Aisha's tweet read, "I met Mark Eaton yesterday. He defended me when no one else would. Today, I know he is the true leader our company needs." #BringBackMark. Below it, someone had posted a photo of the ID badge he had left behind. Showed his real photo. Marcus Ellis, CEO. Comments poured in. Why would a CEO hide as a temp? Because he wanted to know the truth. Do not punish him for loyalty. Across the city, news outlets picked up the story. A local TV station aired a short clip of the empty support floor, the frozen phones, and the silent protest. They interviewed people passing by. "I've been a customer for years," one woman said. "I never knew how the staff felt until..." Now, this man was trying to help. Reporter shook her head. The board must respond. Back at the support center, Tanya Roberts walked through the floor to check if anyone was working. She paused when she saw the empty desks. "What is happening?" she demanded. Aisha stepped forward. She held Tanya's gaze. "Mark Eaton was fired for standing up for me," she said. "We refuse to work until he is back." Tanya's mouth opened, but no words came. The lights flickered until a manager switched them. On again, but the protest held. Upstairs, the board of directors gathered in the sleek glass conference room. The chairwoman, Ms. Henderson, tapped her pen on the table. "Have you seen these posts?" she asked. Several directors nodded as they scrolled on their phones. "This is a PR disaster," one man said. "If we don't act, our stock will drop." Customers will leave. Another director frowned. He was a temp. He overstepped his authority. Ms. Henderson held up her hand to silence him. He was also our CEO, she said. He did not overstep, he acted with integrity. We hired him to lead, to do what was right. The room fell silent. A link to an employee video played, showed Aisha's speech. We need respect and honesty more than titles. The board looked at each other and then at the TV screen. The local news anchor signed off, "We will bring you more as this story develops." But one thing is clear. A wave of solidarity has washed over this company, demanding justice. On the support floor, the employees still waited. Phones were off. Laptops open, but no one clicked. They waited for a signal. Aisha felt butterflies in her stomach. She wondered if Marcus was safe. She worried the board might never relent. Then her phone buzzed. She tapped the screen. A message from the company's official account. Effective immediately, Marcus Ellis is reinstated as CEO with full support. From the board, Tanya Roberts has been placed on leave pending review. Thank you to all employees for standing for what is right. A cheer went up so loud it would have startled the security guard outside. People hugged, laughed, and cried. Aisha's eyes filled with tears of relief. She thought of Mark, of the man who had risked everything. She hoped he would come back soon. Across town, Marcus's phone buzzed again. This time it was an email. From the board, subject, "Welcome back." He tapped it open and read the words he had dreamed of. Dear Marcus, your courage has inspired our entire company. We invite you to return as CEO and lead us forward. Sincerely, the board of directors. He let out a laugh that filled his quiet apartment.
Nice.
He stood and walked to the window, where the city lights twinkled like hope. He closed his eyes and whispered, "I'm coming back." On his way to the office that evening, he replayed the day's events in his mind. He thought of the frozen phones, the silent protest, the rush of solidarity. He thought of Aisha's brave voice and of the many voices that had risen behind her. He felt pride and humility rise together. When he entered the building, he walked to the front door. The guard's eyes widened when he saw Marcus Ellis in his suit once more. "Welcome back, sir," the guard said, offering his hand. Marcus shook it with a grin. Inside, the support floor buzzed with energy. Phones rang again as people returned to work. Marcus walked down the row, shaking hands and thanking people by name. When he reached Aisha's desk, she stood and hugged him. She said. She showed all of us what leadership means. Marcus smiled and brushed her hair away from her face. "No," he said quietly. "You did it. Showed me what courage looks like." He guided her to a small gathering of team leads. With a nod from Ms. Henderson, he placed a new badge around Aisha's neck. It read, Team Lead, Customer Support. Her eyes shone. Later that night, as he sat in his office, Marcus thought of this part of his journey. He had started Undercover to see the true faces of his company. He had found courage in attempts. Heart. He had seen solidarity build from a single act of kindness. And now he had the chance to build a culture where respect and honesty were not optional. He leaned back in his chair and looked at the city lights. He knew challenges lay ahead, but he felt ready. He had seen what happened when people stood. Together, he believed that true change came when everyone's voice mattered. He whispered to himself, "This is only the beginning." And with that promise, he prepared to write the next chapter of their story together. Marcus arrived at the office early the next morning, the sky still pale with dawn. He paused at the entrance, feeling the smooth glass doors beneath his fingertips. He drew in a deep breath and walked inside. The lobby felt warm and alive. Stark contrast to the cold silence he had left behind as Mark Eaton. He gave a small nod to the security guard, who offered a respectful smile in return. Marcus felt a tingle of hope swell in his chest. He rode the elevator to the top floor where his corner office awaited. Along the hallway, framed photos of recent team events and community projects hung on the walls. He saw pictures of support. Staff volunteering at a food drive, tech teams hosting coding workshops, customer service agents cheering at a company picnic. These images reminded him of the human heart of the company, people like Aisha, people he had almost never met. before going undercover when his office doors opened. He found a stack of welcome back notes from employees across every department. Each note shared a personal story, a small act of kindness, a moment of learning, or a time someone had made them feel valued. One note from a longtime support agent read, "Thank you for showing us respect. We will pay it forward." Marcus smiled and placed the notes on his desk, where he could read them whenever he needed encouragement. He did not sit down for long. He had important work waiting. He pressed a button on his desk and summoned his executive assistant. Within minutes, she arrived with his first cup of coffee. Marcus thanked her and asked her to set up a meeting with the board for later that day. Then he asked her to join him on the support floor in 30 minutes. She looked surprised but pleased. Quickly agreeing to help, he tucked his mug away and headed downstairs. As he stepped onto the support floor, the hum of headsets and clicking of keyboards greeted him like a reunion. He spotted Aisha at her desk, already wearing her new team lead badge. She looked up and caught his eye. God. Her face broke into a wide, proud smile. Marcus felt a warm glow at the sight. He walked to her desk quietly, letting the moment sink in. Around him, colleagues whispered and smiled, nodding at him as he passed. Some offered small waves, others mouthed silent thank yous. He reached Aisha's desk and gently tapped her shoulder. She turned, and he said quietly, "Thank you for everything you did. This place is better because of you." She blinked, tears gathering at the corners of her eyes. "You did it," she said softly. "You made the board listen." Marcus shook his head. "We did it," he replied. "The courage started it all." He invited Aisha to walk with him toward the boardroom. Along the way, they passed Tanya Roberts' desk. She was not there. A note on her monitor read, "On leave pending review." Marcus felt a flicker of relief. He had no desire for revenge, only fairness. Believed in second chances when people showed true remorse. He resolved to reach out to Tanya later once things had settled. They reached the boardroom door just as the members of the board were taking their seats. Marcus and Aisha slipped in quietly. The chairwoman, Ms. Henderson, looked up and offered a warm smile. "Welcome back," she said, "and welcome, Aisha." Others nodded and smiled in greeting. Marcus stood at the head of the table. He glanced at each director. "Thank you for supporting the team," he began. His voice was calm but strong. "Today, we begin a new chapter. Our company succeeds when every voice matters. We learned that lesson the hard way." He paused, letting his words land. "I want to build on the change you started by reinstating me. But more importantly, I want to create a culture where respect and honesty guide every decision." He outlined several concrete steps. First, he proposed a clear code of conduct that emphasized mutual respect, fairness, and open feedback. Asked the board to approve regular training sessions on unconscious bias, led by experts who could help everyone understand how small actions can hurt or help. He suggested a new channel for employees to share ideas and concerns directly with leadership anonymously if they preferred. He spoke of career pathways for support staff to grow into technical and management roles. Each idea received nods and quiet approval. When he finished, he looked at Aisha and said, "Thank you for showing us what leadership means. I would like you to help lead these changes with me." Aisha's eyes shone. The board applauded. Ms. Henderson said, "I fully support this vision." Other directors voiced their agreement. The plan was set in motion. After the meeting, Marcus and Aisha returned to the support floor. He asked her to gather a small group of volunteers, agents, team leads, and HR representatives to join a task force. They would design the new training and feedback channels. Aisha agreed eagerly, her confidence clear. Marcus watched as she spoke with colleagues, jotting down ideas on a whiteboard. He felt a swell of pride. His undercover mission had shown him the real needs of his team, and now he could help build something lasting. That afternoon, he found the quiet corner where he once sat as Mark Eaton. The desk was empty, the headset gone. He ran his hand over the wood, remembering the days he stood up for kindness. He whispered to himself, "Thank you, Mark." Then he stood and turned to join Aisha and the task force, ready to work. Weeks passed in a blur of meetings, workshops, and policy rollouts. The new code of conduct was posted on every wall, and online training sessions filled calendars. Managers and agents alike shared stories of how a small change in how they spoke or listened made a big difference. The feedback channel buzzed with ideas for product improvements, customer experience, and even office improvements. The sense of unity grew stronger each day. One morning, Marcus invited all support staff to a special gathering in the lobby. A crowd of employees filled the space, phones at the ready. He stepped up to the makeshift podium. A hush fell, he said. A few weeks ago, I walked among you as Mark Eaton. I saw your hard work, your struggles, and your strengths. You taught me so much today. I want to celebrate you. He called Aisha forward. The crowd cheered as she joined him. Marcus handed her a small plaque engraved with the words Leader of Change. Aisha blushed as she accepted it, said, "You inspired us all. This plaque acknowledges your courage, your kindness, and your leadership." She held it up, and people clapped and cheered. Then Marcus asked Ms. Henderson to join them. He said, "Our chairwoman has guided us with wisdom, but today I'd like to acknowledge her support." Ms. Henderson stepped forward, and Marcus presented her with a letter signed by every employee, thanking her for listening and taking action. She looked touched, wiping a tear from her eye. The celebration continued with snacks, laughter, and stories shared among colleagues. Marcus wandered through the crowd, shaking hands and sharing smiles. He saw Tanya hesitantly approach him and Aisha. When she reached them, she looked down at her feet. Marcus offered his hand. She looked up, eyes honest. "I'm sorry for how I spoke to you, Aisha," she said softly. "I'm sorry for taking authority too far, Marcus." Aisha nodded, accepting the apology. Marcus smiled and said, "We all have room to learn. I'm glad you're here." Tanya's relief was clear. She promised to attend the new training sessions and to listen better. As the day ended, Marcus returned to his office. He looked out over the city skyline as the sun dipped low. He thought about his undercover journey, the small battles, the risk, and the rewards. He realized that real leadership meant walking alongside people, listening with an open heart, and being willing to admit mistakes. He opened his laptop and wrote in his private journal, "Today we stood together. Today we chose respect. Today we started a culture that values every voice. Tomorrow we continue." He closed the laptop and leaned back, a calm satisfaction settling over him. He knew challenges lay ahead, but he also knew his team was ready. Together, they had shown that even one act of kindness can spark a wave of change. And together, they would keep the wave rolling.